Hi, everybody. This is Gitte Winter from Room for Reflection. I'm the author of the Children's Meditations in My Heart and recently co-authored a chapter in Dr. Andreas' Time to Rise. And I'm going live today to talk to you about the inner voices that we all hear and somehow that define who we are. The reason I'm doing this today is that I've just given an interview in Danish about self-love, self-acceptance, and how we build self-love in our children. Excuse me. So all of that made me reflect a bit more about what is self-love, what is self-acceptance, and how do we know how to teach this to our children? So today I want to talk to you about all of those inner voices and how they are created and how we understand which voices we should listen to. So if you listen in and you want to know about all of these inner voices and how they affect us and the way we parent, you're very welcome to listen in. And if you have questions along the way, you're welcome to type them in and I'll do my best to answer them. I'm going to talk to you today about a mixture of these two books. I'm going to talk to you about my chapter in Time to Rise and how self-love comes from listening to your inner voices. Because my chapter in Dr. Andrea Pennington's new book, Time to Rise, is all about listening to my voices. And in this book, I write about how I have been taught to listen to my inner voices all through my childhood, and I also talk or write about how that has affected my whole life. And knowing about self-love and inner voices, I think those two things go so well in hand. So if you have self-love and you are listening to your inner voices, I believe that the voices you choose to listen to from within come from love as well. So if you're struggling with self-love, if you haven't been brought up in the way I've been lucky to be brought up with, in a loving family with loving parents and just a wonderful childhood, you can begin to listen to some of those voices who aren't really serving you. And of course, those voices have been following you all through your life. And if they have, and you've become a parent, there's a very good risk that you are broadcasting the same type of voice to your child if you're not conscious. If you're not conscious of what they've done, those voices have done to you. So that's what I'm going to talk to you about today. The reason why I'm doing this right now is that the last few days I have had a little, there was a post on Facebook. And you guys have been commenting like crazy on this post, and I've read through all of those comments. And it has made me reflect a lot because some of the comments are really tough to read. This post, you can see it on this on my Facebook group. It's like a little I don't know, some of those, that goes on and on on Facebook. It's a picture. And it says on the picture, name something your mother always said. So the first thing that comes to mind, you were asked to type in. And the activity on this post has been crazy. And I've been reading through many of the comments because it's become quite a little study for me to see what your parents have left you with in your mind. So when asked, name something your mother always said, what comes to mind? So take a moment to just reflect for those of you watching this. What comes to mind? What is the voice you hear right now when I ask that question? So name something your mother always said. Now, for those of us who were brought up in a healthy environment with lots of love, comments would be, I believe in you, I love you, I'm here for you, I support you. And those were the voices I heard when growing up. And those are some of the voices I have been writing about in Time to Rise. And my chapter is called The Voice. the reason I've written about this is because when I became pregnant with my own daughter, it felt so important to try to decipher how I had been brought up, because I was very happy with the way I had been brought up. And the thing that kept coming back to me as I was also writing my first book, the pink one you see in the back, it's not translated to English yet, but if it had been, it would be Murky Bastards and Pink Clouds. It's a preteen book with lots of girlfriend stuff and a little crime scene going on. Oh, anyways, as I was writing that book and trying to decipher the kind of mother I wanted to be, I kept hearing a voice in my ear, and that was the voice of my mother. So as I was brought up, I could always tune into my mother's voice, and I could always get advice. And I've written in this book how much that has meant to me. Now, when I say this in different interviews, some of the people who hear this say, "Oh my goodness, you always heard your mother's voice. That must have been terrible." But not to me, because it was a kind voice. So if you have that feeling inside of you that must have been terrible to always carry your mother's voice around inside of you, or your father's, or your teachers, or your grandmother's, whoever had that power to ring in the back of your mind, if that hasn't been positive, or if it has been full of blame or guilt or something like that, it affects you. And it will, if you don't deal with it, affect the way you parent today. So I've written in this book about all the positive things that come out of learning to listen to my inner voices as I was growing up. Now, as I read through that post on Facebook, so I just mentioned that I shared the other day a post saying, "Name something your mother always said." So now when I read through some of your comments on Facebook, so this is people typing in on Facebook, there is a slight risk that somebody they know will read this. There is a slight risk if their parents are still alive, that if the mother is still alive, that she will read this. And some of the stuff written in the comments is, for me, quite tough to read. So when you can write something like this on Facebook, on a live, like public group, I think there is some truth to it. And I think there is something to deal with when you write something like this. And that's why I'm live today, because I know it affects the way you parent as well, if you don't become conscious of these voices. So I've handpicked a few of these comments that I'm going to share with you now. And as I read them, I want you to imagine that you are a little child hearing this from your mother. When I read these comments and imagine that, it breaks my heart. So the first one I've picked out is, "Don't you come running to me when you break your leg." So some of these comments might have been said in a funny voice. What does that mean? Don't come running to me when you break your leg. It means if you are adventurous and if you are testing out the boundaries of your physical body, so if you're jumping from rock to rock, if you're climbing up a tree, if you are on your roller skates, you're riding your bike too fast, if you go skiing and you play on your skis, whatever you've done, and your mother says, "Don't come running to me when you break your leg." So what does that leave you with? To me, it feels like, so you take my safety net away. You teach me that I can't go out and be adventurous. You teach me that life is dangerous and that if I test my physical boundaries, I will break my leg. So you also teach me that I can't trust my body and my physical condition. If I'm brought up with this sense, so you hear the sentence, and then you dig deeper and deeper into them and figure out, what does it actually mean? What does it leave me with? I can't trust my body. How can that affect me while growing up? Here's another one. Excuse me. Shut your mouth and eat your dinner. So when I ask, name something your mother always said, and a person answers, shut your mouth and eat your dinner. How does that feel when you hear that sentence? And you imagine that you're a child. If sorry for my voice. If you dig deeper behind shut your mouth and eat your dinner, is that what you're telling me right now is not important. I don't care to listen to you. I don't believe you have anything important to say, so you just shut your mouth and eat your dinner. So if you take it a little bit further down, it can mean that your voice is not important. What you're saying is not important, and I don't have time or I don't care to listen to you. If that stays with you while growing up, you listen to that again and again, it means that your voice is not important. Here's another one. You're a silly girl. You're a silly girl. So when your mother says that to you continuously, and this woman actually she still says it to me now, and I hate it. Growing up thinking that you're silly, how does that affect your life? How does that affect the way you look at yourself? I'm just a silly girl. I'm not important. I'm just silly. Nobody will listen to me for real. I don't have anything important to say because I'm just silly. It's not a good footprint, right? And she still says it today, and this woman still hates it. So of course, when a mother is still saying it to an adult daughter, it has just been going on for so many years that if you're not conscious, you begin to believe that it's true. So this woman might very well walk around thinking that she's silly and that her message to the world is silly as well. Here's another one, and now they become, I'm just going to read 4 in a row because they're all pretty much the same, and there are many comments like this on this post. So we're talking about a post I posted on Facebook the other day saying, name something your mother always said. And we are talking about how that inner voice might still affect you as an adult. So here comes 4, and they're pretty tough. Wait till I catch you. You're gonna have some hammering. Here's another one. I hate you kids. Here's another one. I'll bang your bloody heads together. Here's another one. You little cheeky bastard. Wait till your dad gets home. These are 4 different people, and there are many more comments like this on the post. And when I read them, it just breaks my heart. Because having these threats of violence hanging over your head as a child affects you extremely. Wait till I catch you. What will happen when my mother catches me? Or even worse, when my dad gets home? What will happen then? So you've been in trouble, you've been fooling around, you broke a vase or whatever. You've been playing football in the living room and all of these things that you're not supposed to, and then you have to wait until your dad gets home. That's something my father's generation expected. That's not something we should expect from our generation, or even our children should expect in their generation. So if you have been brought up with this sentence, wait until your dad gets home, and you're still saying that to your child, it's time to reflect. It's time to become conscious of what that means to your child. Those threats of violence, or threats, it might not be physical violence, but if you wait till your dad gets home. It's a long afternoon waiting for something bad to happen. It might just be a lot of words, but that's mental bullying as well. It might even be slapping, even today, even if it's illegal in many cultures. So right now, I want to tune into how those voices affected you when you were a child. We all have this inner child inside of us. And every time something reminds us of our childhood, our inner child reacts. So every time you hear something like this, so if you guys who are listening are some of the people who've even written some of these comments in the post the other day, it just hurts. And that inner child still hurts if we don't heal all of these wounds that we were given as a child. So I'm just going to read one more. And it's similar to some of the comments I have read already. So here's one very common as well. Children should be seen, not heard. This is a woman writing this sentence, and many of you guys might have heard this while growing up. Children should be seen, not heard. So this is sort of a strict disciplining home. Children should just sit and have dinner and don't say anything. So what we learn is that our voice as a child is not important, and if that is repeated to us all through our childhood, we might believe it still when we are adults. So I write back to this woman. I try to write to some of you because this post really made a big impression on me, and as I said, it really broke my heart reading some of your comments. It's very long and there are a lot of comments, so I haven't come around to everybody. Okay, so I write back to this woman. She says, children should be seen, not heard. And then I write, and that's what her mother told her when she was a child. And I write back, how did that make you feel? And she writes back that it still stays with her, that she feels that people just don't listen to her. And she still today believes that her voice is not important. And what I want to say to women like her is that I'm sure you all have wonderful, wonderful messages to bring to the world. We all do. And maybe it's time to find new people who will listen to you. And that we should never, ever, ever think that we are not important and that we are not allowed to shine our inner lights. So this brings me to the children's meditations in my heart and my work to talk about self-love, self-acceptance. So this interview I was just giving this morning about self-love and self-acceptance was much about how I look at my own worthiness and my own self-love and how that affects the way I parent. So those two things come together. So I've just talked about Time to Rise and how I wrote in this book by Dr. Andrea Pennington how much my inner voices have affected me while growing up in a very positive way, always giving me guidance, always teaching me when I've been on a wrong path, teaching me when I had to go in another direction, giving me courage to do things on my own, to become an entrepreneur, to become a writer, to publish my books international, and all of these things. So I've written in this book how that affects me and how important it's been to me. So I've just shared all these not so positive ways your parents have affected you in your life when you think about what did your mother always say when you were a child. So those inner voices stay with us. And if we have not been brought up in a way where in a positive environment, in a loving environment, those voices can still be with us today. So this is where, that's where I wanted to take this conversation today, because I believe we can heal those wounds from our own childhood through our own children. So this is what I believe. So we are born into families. So we're all beautiful souls living together on this planet. And I believe that we come as a child to choose our parents, and we come with special gifts for this parent that we have chosen to be born by. So this is what I believe. It becomes a little bit more spiritual now. It doesn't have to be though. So if you look at it like this, so there is a parent who might not have given you the love you deserved while growing up and has led to all of those things we've just discussed. I've just shared with you some of the rather tough expressions you've shared with me on Facebook the last couple of days about what your parents told you when you were kids. What is the one sentence you hear when I ask you, what did your mother always say to you when you were a child? So if that hasn't been positive, if you haven't been brought up the way I have with lots of love and lots of like parents who believe in you and support you and always challenge you to do your best and believe that, like, give you wings and teach you to fly and pick you up when you fall, and keep asking you to shoot for the moon because they believe you can reach the stars. If you haven't been brought up like that, it's tough to bring that onto your child. And there is a risk that you might also dim the light inside of your child. So this is where the child becomes the healer. And this is so important. So this is what this book has given me so much feedback on, that parents who haven't been as fortunate to grow up in a loving environment like I have, they want their children to grow up in a different way. And this takes a lot of courage, a lot of energy, a lot of reflecting to break with the way you have been brought up, to take a different path as a parent, because the most common thing to do is just to raise your children like you were raised. So if you don't reflect on the things you didn't like, or if you don't understand why your parents did what they did and how that affected you, there is a big risk you're going to repeat it to your children. But nobody teaches us to become a parent. We have to do it in our own way. There is no manual that can teach us how to become the best parent to our individual children, because all children are different as well, right? So we very easily repeat what our parents have done to us. And if we don't like it, it takes an effort to change that pattern. So what I hear with this book is that, so parents want to change the way they raise their children. They want to raise from a loving heart, and they have so much love for their children. So this is very positive. When we become parents, we feel so much love for our children, even though we might not have felt it in our own childhood. So I love this. This is so beautiful, because this is where the healing power of life is, in love. So we feel tremendous love for our child. And as we know something hasn't been good in our own childhood, we find books like this one and many other wonderful books to try to do it differently. We read the Children's Meditations in My Heart to our children at bedtime so they can know how loved they are. We want our children to know how loved they are. So if I ask you, what is the one sentence you always tell your child? And you just repeat the one you heard from your parents, and it isn't positive, it's time to reflect. It's time to become conscious of how this is affecting you. If you had a wonderful childhood and you're repeating the same pattern to your children, well, everything is going to be all right, right? You know that because it went well for you. So if you are that type of parent that I'm talking to today that didn't have a good upbringing, and you want to change it, and you want to show your children that they are loved from a different place than that you felt when you were a child, you pick up a book like this and you start reading it to your child, and your child believes you. So this is the magic part. So even though you weren't loved the way you deserved when you were a child, you can still love your child the way he or she deserves. And that's the healing. So when you do this and you read this to your child at bedtime and you share your love with your child, you become aware of how much love you have inside for your child. So many of you parents who've grown up in an environment like I've just described that hasn't served you well, you might fear when you're pregnant that you aren't able to love your child enough. And when the child is born, for most of you, you figure out that you are able to love your child. And I love that. I love that healing that goes on when we become parents ourselves. So you start loving your child, and you start parenting in a different way. You share these stories at bedtime, and you see that your child believes you. So that's the first step. Your child believes the love that you share with your child, and it's all about heart energy, right? So they feel it as well. So for those of you who've been struggling at bedtime and you pick up this book and in 10 minutes your child is asleep, it's because it's transferring your heart's energies to your child, and it affects your child, and that makes your child feel safe, calm, and loved, and it's much easier to sleep. So when you share that voice with your child, you are loved, my child. I believe in you. I support you. I will always be here for you. And you even share it from your heart and energy. Your child believes you. And when your child believes you, it's time for you to believe in you. So that's the healing. Your child, you can see the effect it has on your child. You can see how much love you have for your child, and you can see that your child feels protected, safe, loved, calm, and all of these things that you wished you had as a child. So you learn from that process that you have all that love inside of you. You might not have been given it when you were a child the way you deserved, but you still have it, and you have full capacity to love from all of your heart. The first thing you might notice is that you can love someone else, maybe your partner, maybe your child, maybe even a pet, in a different way than you might love yourself. So once you start to tune into your capacity of loving, it's time to begin to direct it to yourself. So when you shape those voices you give to your child, full of love, full of protection, support, heart energy, when you start to give that to your child, it's time to start tuning into those voices inside of you. Those voices full of love and support and all light and love, and all of these voices, they come from the heart. And the heart is connected to your intuition. And it's actually your intuition shaping all of those voices. So you have inside of you, when you're full of love like that, you have access to your heart and you have access to your intuition. And that's the voice that you want to let you guide you. So that's what I wrote about in Time to Rise, how to tune into those different voices we have inside of us and make sure we listen to the right ones. So if you are one of those who have posted these last few days on Facebook, some of those really tough comments I've just read up aloud, I want you to try to just reflect on how that voice is affecting you. And the next thing to ask you is it true? Is that way of looking at me really true? Is that voice serving me today? And I bet it isn't. I bet it's time to look at you in a different way, in the way you deserve, in the way you look at your child. It's time to direct the love you have for your child to yourself, and look through those lenses. You look at your child, look at yourself through those lenses as well. So if you feel that those things your mother said to you when you were a child is no longer serving you, and you can see you parent in a different way, and you see that you're able to share love and a loving voice with your child that your child believes in, it's time to ask if those old voices are still serving you. So for some of you who've written on this post, it might just be something you reflect that that's what I heard when I was a child. I dealt with it. I moved on. I have a happy life now. I'm full of self-love and self-acceptance. It's wonderful. But there are so many people walking around still believing in those voices they heard when they were growing up that weren't so positive. And it's time to release. It's time to let go of those voices that are no longer serving you. And it's time to trust your heart and trust that you can heal those wounds with your love, and your child will show you the way. So that's all I had for you today. Thank you for watching. Emily, you're from Cornwall. Hi Bettina, you're also watching. I haven't been looking into the comments, and I just had so much on my chest today because I feel this is so important. So if you know somebody out there you think would benefit from hearing what I just said, you're welcome to share this video. And otherwise, I wish you a good day, and I wish you a wonderful weekend. And I wish for you that you tune into the voices of love inside of you. That's your intuition. And those voices will guide you in the right direction and will guide you to become the parent you really want to become or be.